Hello, Mate's Thrive Nation. Today is going to be a very special show because we're going to be talking about functional medicine, integrative medicine, holistic medicine, possibly even my sort of love, Chinese medicine, with someone who's been just the pioneer in this field, who's pioneered functional diagnostic nutrition, functional diagnostic nutrition coaching. There's a new medical model. I think it's preventative, it's proactive, and it's personal. And so I really want to welcome Reed Davis to the show.
Thank you, Steve. I'm very happy to be here.
Brilliant. Now, we spoke just offline that a lot of our clients and patients are executives, business leaders, entrepreneurs, and those people that really need to have their mental and physical and emotional health really solid and strong and sustainable over time. So give us a sort of like stories that people can really relate to, get hold of, a female and a male sort of in that category who went through your process, and you can actually take us through your process in that archetype or that avatar who comes to see you, who's seen many doctors before, and really wants to look at a new way of healing and health and wholeness.
You know, I'd be very happy to get to some great examples. And over the 25 years plus, obviously, we have a lot of success stories, or I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in. And I have to give a little background. Right now, I'm teaching a course in functional lab work, lots of lab work, as it applies to all natural, anti-aging, longevity, drug-free type protocols. So basically, anyone that we work with can live themselves out of the problems you've probably basically lived yourself into, with all the stressors and all the interaction between these stressors and all of what we call metabolic chaos that creates in the body. We find that we can run the labs, sort it out for you, identify what the healing opportunities are. Those are different than medical diagnosis. That's a label for something for which there's an algorithmic drug or, therapy. What we do instead is we look for the healing opportunities, identify multiple healing opportunities, and teach you how to, again, apply all the lifestyle factors, we call them just general principles of health building, just how to build health instead of treat disease. It really is a different paradigm. And over the years, I had to learn the lab work. I started in the clinic in 1999 because I was changing careers. I went from environmental law and conservation, basically saving the whole planet. I went to working with people. And I wanted to also work on myself. I was in my 40s then, late 40s. And there was nothing really wrong with me, but I got concerned that something might sneak up on me later. And so I ran thousands of labs on thousands of people, and I identified some general principles, what to look for in these healing opportunities: hormones, immune system, digestion, detoxification, energy production, and other things. And then never diagnosing, never prescribing a single pill ever. What is that person, Mr. Jones or Mrs. Smith, what can they do? What can they take control of? Because control is everything. All these people were coming to me, Steve, and they had their hands, out. What can I do? I've been to 8 practitioners already, 10 practitioners, spent thousands and thousands of dollars. So again, running the labs for the underlying causes and conditions was very helpful. I learned very early on, for instance, with one woman who came in, and I could tell she was very sad on this day. She was staring at the ground, sad looking. What's wrong? Oh, it's just 40 pounds. And I'm so tired all the time, and I'm just tired of it all. And I said, well, let's talk about the weight. She goes, oh, there's nothing to talk about. She was on medication, she told me, for the hives. She got blotchy patches on her skin for no apparent reason. And the doctor had put her on a anti-inflammatory to control the hives 2 years prior. So for 2 years, she'd been on medication that made her gain 40 pounds. And, I'm trying to get a word in edgewise, but her story just had to be told that day, if you know what I mean. And so Reed, she says, I'm 40 pounds overweight. I'm sick of it. And there's nothing I can do about it because I'm on this medication for the hives. And when I went to the doctor the other day, she told me, I complained that I was really frustrated with this 40 pounds. According to her, that doctor said, well, lady, you could be fat or you could have the hives, take your pick. And she said, now I felt like your eyebrows went up, so did mine. And then she said, that's very depressing. I can be fat or have the hives. How depressing can I get? How depressed? He says, well, I'll be happy to write your prescription for antidepressants if you'd like.
Sure.
This is such a common thread and story that the standard medicine only wants to treat the symptom. And then when I finally got a word in, I said, first name, why didn't you ever try to find out why you get the hives? And her head almost spun off the neck. What? She finally lifted her eyes up off the ground. And I said, yeah, let's do let's find out why. So, and to skip forward just a couple of weeks, we ran some labs, found out some things that were irritating, that were upsetting her immune system, basically, foods and household chemicals and things like that. And she eliminated those things immediately, being very disciplined and very motivated. And within 9 days, Steve, she called her doctor and said, I'm off your medication because I found out why I get the hives.
Sure. So what were the
And it was,
specific reasons in her case? What were the specific
well,
markers you looked
it
at?
was largely foods, but we never look at just foods because you don't know what part they're playing. In her case, they played a very large part. And so she was able to start losing weight immediately and taking hot showers and working out to a sweat, which she hadn't been able to do in 2 years. Because even on the medication, sweating and hot showers made her get the hives. So this changed her life, and it totally reinforced what I was just kind of creating at the time, which was that system of investigation, which now is it's well known. We've trained people in 50 countries.
Wow.
So yeah, and thousands of practitioners. And I have a very, very active alumni who have graduated from my program, and now we're out there doing it. We call them, six-figure health coaches, if you want. Even doctors have given up their licenses. Hey, I don't need to be bound by these handcuffs of their boards. What the algorithm? Here's how you have to do it. You have to do this. The tests, which largely, by the way, the people that had those tests before they came to us. Again, you mentioned pioneering. I wasn't the original. I was just one of the busiest.
Yeah.
I did a high volume of work to be able to recognize patterns and things. And so I just feel really blessed. So that lady was a success. I have many others, a
Sure.
lady with migraine headaches, and gentlemen too who've had these kind of problems. A person with migraines who couldn't work, was in a dark room with a pillow over their head 5 days a week, and really could only afford a couple investigation type tests, and completely changed their life around, found out what the triggers were. Now, you can't always get lucky like this. And a lot of times there's multiple moving parts. And people understand causal factors. They understand, you hear this word root cause all the time. And I quit using the term root cause because there's never just one. There's always multiple causal factors, what I call contributors to that metabolic chaos that they're suffering from. Multiple symptoms, all kinds of things to make you unhappy. So when you have a system of looking at multiple healing opportunities, and you hardly hear this anywhere, Steve, those things are affecting each other in ways that can't be singly measured much of the time. And I'm saying that as a guy who teaches a course in lab work. All the anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, that's what I do. And I create new lessons all the time as new labs come out. But we have these standard series that we go through with people. And then again, I could never get out the prescription pad. I'll just tell you another quick story. I got a call from one of my, well, I had a patient coming in the office doing very well. She said, Reed, do you work with children? And you mentioned your audience, mostly men and women of executive, but they have kids. And it's amazing what you can do with their children, just like the adults. We run the labs. So this lady said, Reed, I appreciate your work. It's very helpful. Do you work with kids? Yeah, I raised 4 and I was a football coach. So I had turned over year after year after year, whole groups of kids, mostly boys. Matter of fact, all boys. And because they weren't, well, anyway. So I said, yeah, I work with kids. Why? She goes, oh, because they're sending my kid home from school if I don't put him on drugs. And the drug of the day was Ritalin for behavior issues. And I said to her, well, do you think your son has a Ritalin deficiency? And she didn't think that was very funny. I thought it was kind of, I was trying to break the ice, Said, no, I don't. And I don't want to put him on medication. She was upset, actually. I said, well, I understand. Okay, sorry, I just joking around, and she goes, I don't want to put him on drugs. And I said, well, who's doing it? Is there a doctor at the school or a nurse at the school? She said, no, it's the teacher and the principal. I'm like, well, they have no authority or right or reason, to diagnose and treat your, recommend this. Anyway, she said, I don't want to do it. What can I do? I said, I don't know if I could help or not. And that's the truth. You never know what you're going to find when you start this investigative process. Pretty confident and have reasonable expectations. I couldn't guarantee anything. I said, maybe, let's see. Ran some labs, just like with everyone else. We run the labs, find out what's irritating his nervous system and making him jump around and poke the other kids and outburst. And anyway, within 3 weeks of changing his diet, bedtime, exercise schedule, which we tripled, and some other lifestyle factors, we got a call from the principal of the school within 3 weeks of treatment, if you will, this program. I don't call it treatment. Here's a lifestyle program that you need to make sure your son follows. And she did. And the principal calls me after 3 weeks, Steve, and says, oh my God, this is a different kid. I got your number from the mom and he's behaving. He's not outbursting. He's staying in his seat and so and so and so. And I was very happy to hear this until he goes, what'd you put him on? In other words, thinking it was just some drug or some compound, lotion, potion, powder, or pill. That I said, no, there's no magic pill. It's investigation, finding out what's irritating this particular individual, and it runs that individual. You never know what you're going to find, and when you do the behavior, the discipline, if you will, the new habits and things, you get different results.
Got you.
Of course he got better. And so I didn't have a magic pill for the guy, too bad for him. But I was creating this formula of investigation and then of course the behavior. And I have 2 acronyms to share with you. Would that be okay if I
Sure.
did that? Since we're getting to know each other and that. So what I discovered in 10 years, I worked in that office for 10 years, running thousands of labs on thousands of people. Everybody coming, women with their hormone problems, men with their hormone problems, and stress and anxiety and overweight and fatigued and cloudy thinking and all of these problems that a lot had been to the doctor and been told nothing's wrong with you. Your blood work looks normal. You need these pills, and that'll make it go away, maybe. If they don't work, don't worry. We got plenty of other pills to try, right? And some people had parts taken out of their bodies, like hysterectomies and gallbladder removals and all kinds of things. I used to tell those people, if they're taking up parts, don't tell them you get headaches because that would be a bad. So these people are coming to me for investigation, and I discovered that everybody, no matter what their chronic, downward spiraling, chronic stress related, downward spiraling condition was, they could be in really bad shape. They had hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, and nervous system imbalances, the fight, flight versus rest, digest. So that spells hidden. So that's an acronym for you. HIDDEN. It might actually be called a mnemonic, but it stands for hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, nervous system. Makes it really easy for me and all my graduates and providers now to know what they're looking for. So for men, for women, if you have a chronic condition that's been bothering you and maybe even been told nothing much is wrong with you on your blood work, trust me, there's saliva testing, urine testing, stool testing, and some blood work. So we look at a whole lot of data.
Yeah.
It's your data. Belongs to you and only you. Does not belong in your doctor's office, belongs on your computer.
Yeah,
Or
that's true.
stack up.
So just
That's
take
true.
us through the different labs. You mean, obviously, we at the practice been doing that for a long time. We're taking our corporates through, from essential fatty acids, amino acid testing, GI map tests, organic acid testing, the lab tests as well. Maybe you got some pearls of wisdom with regards to labs. We also get a lot of functional medicine docs listening to this, but maybe take us through the
Sure.
process of testing so people can say, well, you know what, I've never tested my vitamin A, I've never tested my vitamin E, I don't know what my RBC magnesium is. So it would be good to take us through your process of what labs get done.
Fantastic. So some of those things you mentioned are included, like the GI map. We check the microbiome. But if you want to test hormone, immune, digestion, you want to test those 6 elements plus oxidative stress. It's easy to do. A lot of the testing comes in kits you could do at home. So you're not always going to the doctor for venipuncture and big blood draws and things. There's one. But the rest that you collect at home, saliva testing of hormones and insulin and the immune system, like secretory IgA. So you can look at this in a simple saliva test and get the circadian rhythm. Basically, you get how stressed out are you. You can measure that through cortisol and DHEA, and you want to be balanced. Balance is everything in our business, in our natural approach and balance. If you're catabolic, means you're stressed out to the max and your body's breaking down. You're aging too fast. And from there, the dominoes start to fall, Steve. So we would do a saliva test of hormones, insulin, melatonin, secretory IgA, which is part of your immune system. It's right in the gut where 80% of your immune system is. You see this downward spiral starting to affect a lot of things, including digestion. So there's another test, a urine test, simple. It's a dried urine test, so it's easy to collect and ship, even overseas and things like that. So we're going to look at your dysbiosis, ability to digest, break down, and absorb food properly. You could be spending a lot of money on organic food. It's not really helping much if it isn't getting broken down and absorbed. You can also look at oxidative stress, liver function, which is a main detoxifying organ. There's a lot of opportunity for healing there. Again, it's what's in balance or out of balance, functional or dysfunctional, to what degree, and that tells us a lot about you. You're also seeing the dominoes falling. You started out with catabolic stress. Then the next thing to go is the sex hormones. They're all included in that hormone saliva test. Then the immune system starts to fall. And then you get more susceptible to a dysbiosis, too much bad flora versus good flora. Then you need that good flora to digest and break down food. And you'll see that diminished. Ooh, not good. That's a healing opportunity. Let's improve that. And the next sort of domino to fall would be the lining of the gut. Now, not only do you have a dysbiosis, and with our microbiome and pathogen tests, we'd see, well, now that you've got a dysbiosis, that's too much bad to good flora. Well, the medical term is bigger, badder bugs. So you got parasites and more bacteria and funguses and things that are now really starting to infest the gut. And then you get leaky gut. You get permeability. Well, then particles that aren't supposed to get through. the first thing they do is congest your liver, which is a main detoxifying organ. So now you've got uh, things spilling over into the bloodstream. Very bad. Creates autoimmunity. So the downward spiral starts with the stressors, and people don't even know they're under some of these stressors. They're chronic, or they could even have disappeared 10 years ago, but there's the downward spiral is still affecting metabolism. So we see these tests, which you asked about, the hormone immune, saliva, the digestion, detoxification, dried urine, the condition of the gut itself, the permeability, zonulin and histamine and diamine oxidase, these markers we look at. We can interpret the, just visualize the lining of the gut itself, the health of the villi, the microvilli, the crypts, and things like that. Spaces between the villi, all this stuff. We visualize how bad it is in there and give you things to do. Now, worse than that might be, you might think, are the parasites and bacteria and fungal overgrowth, but they're only there because they're allowed to be there, because there was an original problem with the host. I don't look at some of these test results as the problem. They're the result of the problem, which you get chronic stress, downward spiral, weakness, a weak host. Now all of a sudden you get these worser conditions. And it can downward spiral from there. Once you get autoimmunity, now you might become a real serious medical condition, which some people come to us and they're in that. They've been diagnosed with all kinds of autoimmune conditions. We don't pay much attention to that, frankly. We keep going upstream to repair, rebuild, rebuild, and restore balance and things. And some of those, with occasional combined medical treatment, can be very, very effective in reversing that, return you to your birthright, which is good health. And I could pause there and then maybe go into what is the protocol. But the investigation,
sure.
you asked, what are the labs? HIDDEN, saliva, urine, blood, stool, and some blood work, because you got to look at food sensitivities. Everybody has some. Everybody. I've never had a test result come back. Matter of fact, we'll give you all your money back, if we don't have any sensitivities. And sometimes those sensitivities could be the problem. They're just the main trigger. Thank God we ran that test. Sometimes those sensitivities, not allergies necessarily, but sensitivities are just part of the problem. Remember, there's multiple causal factors. You got to look at a lot of them, at least 6 or 8 in every person, and see how they're interacting with each other. That's the methodology. A methodology is steps, and the ology part, the thinking, the way you think about it. Like, you don't treat one thing in a person ever. It's not our backyard. That's for doctors, like, you want to treat one thing, go ahead. It's not going to help very much. It might save your life. If it's that bad, yeah, that's a good thing. But otherwise, you don't return to health.
Yeah. Well, there's a difference between absence of disease and being healthy, and I think people don't realize that.
Yeah, so a next logical question, if I could, would be, well, what are your protocols like?
Yeah. Go for it.
So it's weird when you interview yourself on these calls, but I've been doing this so long. I've had so much, all the learning, all the 10 years I spent in that office, sometimes 7 days a week, thousands of labs on thousands of people. Like Einstein said, or not Einstein, Thomas Edison, the great, he goes, I was just finding out ways it didn't work and ways it does work. And I had fun doing all of it. Every day was kind of a blast, even though you worked hard. And when you make these discoveries and it helps someone, it's very rewarding, not just financially. He made a lot more money than I ever did or will, but the rewards are way beyond that for the practitioner, the satisfaction. So the first thing I noticed in the office when I started there, remember, I came out of environmental law conservation. I just wanted to work with people. Instead of saving the planet, what about people? and including me. And when I saw these people coming in the office, yeah, that's great. Coming in, they were getting uh, their medicine, they were getting their chiropractic. We had acupuncture. Was a multiple disciplinary wellness center. And 25 years ago, that was saying something. Now, I started asking people, well, hey, you're coming in 3 times a week. Awesome. What are you doing at home? What's your home
Mm.
program like? What do you eat for
Yeah.
breakfast, lunch, dinner? What time do you go to bed? How much exercise you getting? What about all the stress? A lot of it they couldn't even identify, which we learned to sort out. Um, and then do you take supplements? We think supplements are very important. I don't sell them, but I know a lot about them. I recommend lots of things. So that spells D.R.E.S.S, D.R.E.S.S. It's your diet customized for you based on your genetics, metabolic type, diet, rest, which is beyond just sleep, important. Um, the E is, you could guess it, exercise, So diet, rest, exercise. And the 2 S's in our D.R.E.S.S for health success are stress reduction and supplementation. So, and that's the program. That's what I developed over a 10-year period and continue, obviously. I started teaching in 2008 after almost 10 years in the office. So we've further expanded and developed and researched and it's not just me doing this in the office anymore. Well, my own research, my own observations, thousands of clients, patients of the office. Now it's all the people I taught and all of their clients, and so now it's tens of thousands,
Sure.
and you learn a few things.
Absolutely.
So I'm giving you the basics, the very basics, the HIDDE and investigative methodology, the steps and way of thinking about how to interpret things, correlate with the person. All of our test results explain exactly why you feel crappy. When someone else, well, we don't know why, here's your pills. So that never satisfied me and didn't serve my customers at all.
Now, would you say
So,
that that be the definition of functional diagnostic nutrition, or would you say that's a definition of functional medicine, or how would you sort of
but
define your steps?
it's supposed to be the premise behind functional medicine. The problem is that doctors are still licensed, which is like wearing handcuffs. So it has not yet evolved. So functional diagnostic nutrition is the pure form of what we're talking about. Doctors want to do it, and we have trained doctors, and they try, but they're bound by licensure and standard of care. They have to follow, especially if they're in the insurance model, which most are. They can't. A lot of them are cash practice. They have a little leeway to do the right thing for the customer. And but what I'll say is, functional medicine is not fully evolved. The real pure form is functional diagnostic nutrition, which, by the way, is just a name that I had to name what I was doing, because when I started teaching, they wanted a name for it. Until then I didn't give it a name. It was just, here I am. Now, I was a certified nutritionist and fitness trainer and lots of certificates on the wall, but I wasn't a licensed physician, thank God, because then I would have had the handcuffs on. I never would have developed any of this stuff. I had total freedom to look at all of the labs that were being developed by smart scientists who also weren't concerned with those restrictions. They just want to know what's really wrong with people.
Hmm. Do
And
you guys
so
do amino acid testing there, dried blood spot amino acid testing?
sometimes it's not an initial investigation, because you got to get people sort of
Sure.
improve their digestion and make sure they're breaking and absorbing their proteins, which is where amino acids come from. And amino acid therapy can be very effective later on if you're troubleshooting for specific individuals. But if you don't get the basics right,
Mm,
then those things never really localize the way
sure.
that you would need them. You'd be guessing.
Mm,
And there's people with methods. And now, listen, I don't knock anyone who's getting great results. I know people who start off with a hair tissue mineral analysis. I'm not a good candidate for that, and you barely are. But no, so they, oh, you have to know your minerals and your metals through heritage. That's not my initial way of doing things, including the organic acids and the amino acids. And yeah, they can give you insights that can be important. But if that's all you go by, you're treating the specific things that show up, and that's not as comprehensive or holistic a model.
Hmm. So, I mean, that could be a downstream effect, is what you're saying. I've just, in so many years, never seen so many people with sort of low lysine and low arginine, and then they're taking collagen every day, and they've got too much proline, and they've got too much glycine, and that's coming up, causing a lot of other problems. I think I don't know too many people that know much, that are experts on the amino acid testing. That's why I sort of just asking your view.
Oh, we've run plenty of those, and we have an expert on our team, and Pam Helmley. She's probably the world's leading authority on neurotransmitters, which come from amino acids.
RSE,
So
yeah,
as far
yeah,
as amino acid therapy goes, we have our experts yeah, when we need them, and she teaches part of my course, and it's all inclusive. But I don't start there. I start
yeah.
with the much more basic tests that would give us more basic functions,
Mm,
less into the weeds of specific issues and more just general, so that you could get a person doing all the right things for their genetics and see what shakes out.
mm,
Getting healthy is a journey. I mean, it's just you're going up the steps in a way. And a couple of things about that. I don't know anyone at the top of the steps. Everyone's on their own stairway. Now we see people that have a lot of steps to go, and we help them up. And then we have our own goals and aspirations. I'm 71. I have a mom living who's 94.
hmm,
That that's cool. I want to be like her, but in better shape at 94 and I don't expect to live way past that or anything. We all got to go sometimes. But I want more life in my years, more vitality. I want to be able to do things. I still water ski and surf and ski and things like that. I did have to give up a couple things though, because I kept getting injured. The jujitsu and kickboxing was just too rough, for an old guy. They called me in the gym Bad Santa because I was still one of the strongest guys in there, but I didn't have the speed and agility flexibility that I
yeah.
used to have, and I kept getting hurt. So, because I went full 100%, and but some things you will carry on.
Sure.
Um,
But maybe
you know,
you want
I,
to tell us, like, maybe recent tests that you found have been incredible. I mean, obviously your standard labs, your liver function tests and your kidney function. I mean, those are just standard.
yes.
You can have that done at a traditional functional medicine doc. But what sort
Hmm.
of stood out? I mean, is genetics the second thing, or was it salivary tests that have been game changers? Maybe one or two sort of groups that have been real game changers to the assessment.
Well, here's a real simple thing that if you read David Perlmutter's most recent book called Drop Acid, we're finding out that uric acid, which is very common, you can ask your doctor they'll add it to any blood panel.
Mm,
Don't worry, it's very easily acceptable. Now it's on one of our specific panels, and it's a marker for glucose metabolism. Very, very early warning sign of potential blood sugar problems,
yeah.
which are epidemic. I mean, obesity and type 2 adult onset diabetes is rampant, at least in the United States. How is it in South Africa, by the way? Are you guys seeing the obesity,
Oh yeah,
especially?
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when you've got a third world country and people want very affordable food and cheap food, it's white bread and Coke, and the big food companies are distributing to people that have very limited resources.
Yeah, the sweetened soft drink companies don't like me very much
Yeah.
because I think they're largely responsible for putting the poison in the kids' hands that is making them sick. And it's just one thing. So, but for us who know better than to drink soda, I don't think I've had one in 25 years. I don't drink sugary beverages because I know that while they taste good and can be quite refreshing, they aren't for me because they raise your blood sugar, and just a little bit over time will ruin you.
Yeah.
And so one of the early markers we find is uric acid, to answer your point about that. So, we're also looking at a marker is called 8-hydroxydeoxyguanosine, 8 8-OHG 8-OHG2, and it's a marker for oxidative stress. So are you rusting? In a sense, oxidation happens, and it's normal. You're going to create, free radicals, and they're going to get, you have oxidation and you have antioxidation. We eat antioxidants. Our body makes some antioxidants. Why? For oxidative damage. From what? From normal metabolic processes plus the environment. Like if you smoke, there's a lot of oxidative damage going to happen. See these people with dry looking skin, and all. You see runners for certain reasons. Their skin looks worse than regular people. It's an unnatural thing.
Hmm.
But so oxidative stress is very important, and there's some new markers that measure the mitochondrial oxidation. Things like that are getting pretty interesting, and so we look at the new markers and we decide, are we going to add this to our basic panel? And sometimes we do. And otherwise, you know what, they're just more for troubleshooting later on. Our basics of the basic hormone, catabolic, anabolic, that's cortisol and DHA, along with the sex hormones. You got to measure those always. Now, we've added to our saliva panel the insulin, which is a great marker, also looking at glucose metabolism. Melatonin, which is the sleep hormone, test that at noon because it should be really low. It's high, that indicates a problem. We'd find out why. Again, we look at secretory IgA. It's or secretory, depending on where you're coming from. Secretory, it's a secreted immunoglobulin in the gut. You've heard 80% of your immune system's in the gut. Well, why not look at and see if it's active or overactive or underactive, or if it's overactive, why? Is there a something that's fighting? If it's underactive, do you have a chronic diminished capacity? Are you subject to, again, these bigger, badder bugs? And if you have, again, like people like to ask me, what are the new tests involved? How about a 60-year-old test that should be done in every doctor's office, and used to be? See, physicians used to collect your pee. When I was a kid, they'd collect your pee when you come in the, now they don't do that. They send you to the lab. Okay, it's all done at the lab. It's all hush hush, they'll get that in secret. Used to be, you got to give the doctor a sample. He's going to look for different things and tell you what he found. Well, Mrs. Smith, thanks you for coming in. Turns out you have a positive indican, which tells us that you have too much of the bad bacteria. We're not going to give you an antibiotic, though. We're going to suggest probiotics or something, to just bring the balance back in favor. And then if you did enough talking to that customer or patient, you'd ask them, how's your digestion feeling? From that one test. It's simple urine test. It used to be done in the office 60 years ago. They say, well, I've got a little heartburn, bloating, gas, indigestion, constipation, diarrhea, or the famous alternating diarrhea and constipation. Well, that's explained by a simple urine test done in the office and doctors just quit doing it. I'd rather talk about those tests. When they did stool testing, you should be a human being. You'd send your stool samples in, and they'd emulsify them and get them all ready for examination, and so they would use a microscope. It'd be a person with a microscope, and they would prepare different slides, different lighting, different staining, things you could do. These are like the real poop experts, a person who knew what he was doing, and they'd also put little dashes of it into petri dishes. and see what grew. They put it in an incubator, see what grows, and then with their own eyes identify that species, what kind of fuzz, and they'd become experts. And so in through the microscopy and the trichrome staining and different ways of looking at that, the and the culturing of stool samples. Now they don't do that anymore. You mentioned the GI map. It's a machine. It's all done by machine, and it's all just PCR DNA type testing. So they're looking for things, and they do some good functional markers. Don't get me wrong, it's a good test, but is it as good as what we used to use?
Hmm.
I wonder clinically, if you're the guy in the office who's got Mrs. Smith in front of you, is it good enough? And so I can talk about labs in that way better than what's the latest, greatest
Sure.
test. Sometimes I don't think they're all that great.
Yeah, I got you. Well, thanks for the
But
summary.
things like
That's
uric acid, yeah, that's good to know. I mean, former Perlmutter did his research. And again, but it's an old lab that we now brought into the forefront and the highlight.
Yeah, we had David on the podcast. It was incredible. And I have his book on my table because we're just seeing a plethora of high uric acid as a downstream effect of nutrition, lifestyle, and environment,
It's
but and toxicity as well. So incredible book.
it's a
And
downstream effect of that, but it's an upstream effect of later running into the other glucose metabolism problems, and it could also lead to gout and other things. There's worse stuff that could happen if you have really high uric acid.
yeah, for sure. For sure. All right, let's talk about the coaching aspect. It's in its infancy here in South Africa, and I've always believed you need a team around you. You need people that can walk a journey with you. And there's a huge chasm between physicians and patients. And I really feel that health coaching should grow significantly because, it's the facilitative process of people taking accountability of their health, which is, I think, fundamentally important. There's a value mismatch of the amount of time and resources people put into their health and their performance until now they've got a huge diagnosis and now they've got a huge problem and now they just want to try and throw money at it. Meanwhile, for 30 years, they've unfortunately not understood compound health. They've understood compound interest, but they're not understood compound health. So tell us
And
about your coaching program and why coaches are exceptionally important along the journey of health and performance.
yeah, both are really important. And there's a problem with health coaching. It needs to be um, really raised up to the level that I teach, which is they're really just non-licensed clinicians. They're really good clinicians. I mean, they could work at any clinic, no matter how serious the problems are, and be helpful around again, the things the patient could be in control of. So that's a very high level of health coaching, if you will, non-licensed practitioners, non-licensed clinicians. The problem is that health coaching is being commandeered by modern medicine. Unfortunately, I think they're appropriating the potential and squashing it because the only study being done right now by the US government, the National Institute of Health, is whether a health coach in a setting can help increase medication compliance. So in the case of irritable bowel disease, so health coaching, yeah, I mean, that would work really good for the pharmaceutical, the standard same old BS belief system, um, and uh, and so there's that's what we want to be aware of is our health coaches just coming in to help make sure Mrs. Smith is taking her IBD medication,
Yeah.
which it's effective. Health coaches can do that because they work on the psychology, the motivation, active listening, and questioning, and they can get to why Mrs. Smith wants to get rid of those symptoms and therefore continue to take her medication. And that's the only study being done right now by the NIH, and it's kind of disappointing, really. Um, because health coaches are capable of so much more if they're trained properly. Like with me in my program, it's the anatomy, physiology, biochemistry behind the lab work, so that then you can understand what general principles or principles of health building need to be applied. Now, that's a useful non-licensed clinician who could work with the team. And sure, the doctor might say, oh, Mrs. Smith, you've got this disease or that disease, some condition that needs medical oversight.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you also need to D.R.E.S.S. And that's why we have Reed's team here to look at other data which don't concern the doctor because they're not diagnostic tests. They're functional tests to just look for what's out of balance. There's no diagnosis in there. That's why doctors don't run a lot of this stuff. A lot of it's considered research use only, even though we've been doing it for 25 years, which is kind of weird. It just means insurance companies don't want to pay for it. So for the struggling person out there, if you're an executive and you have the money, you want to hire a functional medicine practitioner who's at least going to look for underlying causes and conditions. You might have to pay cash out of pocket for some of these labs. Not covered by, I guess South Africa has like England, the health savings, or what do you call it? The nationalized health care, like Canada, and that. You don't.
No.
Well, good on you. Yeah. So here in the States, insurance is expensive. I still have to have mine by law and things like that, but it just doesn't cover the right labs.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
your question about health coaching, where does it fit into the medical model? Either it fits into it by compliance for that model, or it's outside of that model, and we work out of a different sandbox, so to speak. And that's where I think it should be going.
Sure.
And that's the pure form of functional medicine is what we do, because we're not bound by certain algorithms. Like doctors in this country, if they see certain things, they have to diagnose to get paid. If it's insurance, they have to diagnose to get paid. That diagnosis has a standard of care you can't go outside of, not right away. You have to try a few things that aren't going to work first. It's really kind of insane.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
so let me just wrap it up by saying that we're in a different sandbox, and it comes from many years ago. When I was in the clinic, people wanted to build health, but their ladder was on the wrong wall. They were going to physicians looking for a diagnosis, and they wanted to, well, that's not the right diagnosis. And they'd get a different diagnosis from each doctor. And they're trying to be compliant, and they're trying to do a little diet and exercise, and it's just not working. Their ladders were on the wrong wall. So we built a different wall, completely different sandbox, only investigative functional labs, and then only the things you could be, no medication, no surgery, only what you can be in control of to reach. What are you going up the ladder for? To reach genetic potential. So it's the highest form. Could that work well in South Africa within the medical system? No, you kind of have to do both parallel and then see where they could be integrated by open-minded physicians. And
Yeah.
we're all for it.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Or
look,
for the
most
doctor.
of our clients have all got their own medical insurance, and then they come in, and a lot of the diagnostic tests aren't paid for, and the health coaching isn't paid for. So, yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts.
yeah, there is. And obviously, unfortunately, the state system, the medical state system here is really, really third world, and unfortunate for the most of the masses in South Africa. But that's some of our challenges being a third world country. Let's
It's
talk just about, I know we've got coming to the end, like the future of sort of health, maybe wearables, if you use heart rate variability, where you see it going and what you're excited about.
Well, there are some new devices that you can use to help with your breathing, get your breathing right, get your heart rate right, heart rate variability, and these things. So wearables are cool. There's rings, there's watches, there's other things, and I just call it all sort of devices. Um, I sent one to my mom the other day. Again, she's 94 and she gets anxiety. And medication isn't the answer for her. She didn't raise us that way. And I actually grew up in Canada. And she's willing to hold a device in her hand that actually pulsates. It physically pulsates, and she times her breathing with that pulsation, and it slows her heart down. And then eventually the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, and she's completely relaxed. Because when you're not relaxed, you're in fight flight. You got more of the sympathetic dominant, and your heart rate goes up, and your blood pressure goes up, and your eyes dilate, and your cortisol goes up, and your blood sugar goes up, and you're in a state to fight or flight. But how much fighting and flighting is a 94-year-old going to do? Anyway, so mom, you need to calm the heck down. And here's something that will help you. And oh, by the way, the same device can be used later. You could download the data, you can get your heart rate variability and these various things. So I find things like that very helpful, especially to teach you. I kind of old fashioned, and I don't really call it meditation, prayer. Behind this screen here that you see behind me, which Van Gogh painted when he was at the sanatorium in St. Remy. They're actually almond blossoms. And to me, that was rest and recovery. That was his stress reduction. Go to the sanatorium and just paint, quit working, whatever else he had to do to support himself, blah, 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 went out the window. So that could be very much stress reduction. And some of these devices can be brought in to help you do kind of the same thing. And behind that screen is a daybed. And I'm in a minute, if I feel strict, because I have meetings, could be a financial meeting, could be a science meeting, I could be getting interviewed. So my concept shifting is, and this is something executives that you deal with all have potential of suffering from, is concept shifting, and it's stressful. It's why kids are so stressed out, because they have to go from math class to history class to some other damn class without any breaks between and no exercise. And so they're all stressed out from concept shifting. I can go on my daybed and do some meditation, in a sense, prayerful meditation, and I get out of that, and it takes only 5 minutes. I don't need a device. I got a built-in device, but I think they're very, very helpful, Steve. But I also don't like jewelry. I can't wear a ring. It just bothers me.
Yeah.
And watches, I break them or lose them, and or a rough guy, so I like other things. But for some people, I think they're fantastic. My wife wears a ring to bed every night, all the time, and always getting up and checking her phone. And, oh, I slept good last night. Well, that's one way of knowing. Me, I get up, I feel refreshed and lots of energy, and that's how I know I slept good. So I think they're great if you don't take out the human element completely. Is that an answer? I don't know.
That's a definite answer. Okay, maybe just what you're excited about in the future with regards to beating this chronic, disease epidemic. What's really exciting you?
Exciting is people are waking up to a lot of things that they've been fed a lot of BS, different belief systems that say it's okay to just don't worry, you can eat whatever you want. You can just need Ozempic, like that people are becoming more aware that drugs only treat the symptoms. Now, I don't see pharmaceutical companies going away. They are the most profitable, powerful organizations on the planet, and there's a lot to bite off and chew there. But hey, I'm a guy who believes that we can make a difference and just get people aware, create self-awareness, and make health your number one goal. And so I'm creating an army of lieutenants that go out and do that by running the labs, getting people to look at their own data. So there's a data-driven movement. I've got a name for it. I hesitate to give it out, but it's intelligent pathway, using intelligence that you've gathered, data. So data-driven pathway, journey of pursuing one's own health requires you knowing your own data. So that movement is expanding and growing. And I'm just one guy teaching that. And there's other guys. I'm probably just the most naturopathic in a sense, like absolutely. We don't play in the medical backyard.
Got you.
Very much. Not at all.
Great. Okay, fantastic show. I think it's given us a good understanding of functional medicine and functional diagnostic nutrition. Where can people connect with you or do your courses or just really like email you and find out more about this new paradigm?
I was just looking for that URL because we made a special one up for you. And and I think it's fdntraining.com. FDN. Now, that stands for Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. And again, when I taught my first class in 2008, I had to come up with a name for the course, for the class. I just called it that because it's very functional. It's very data driven. The D could be, but I call it diagnostic, not medical diagnosis, but just functional diagnosis. And then nutrition, but really it's nurturing. And so the URL you want is fdntraining.com/made-to-thrive
Okay.
after your podcast. I should have just known that, but I had to look it up here. And so it's fdntraining.com/made-to-thrive.